We're going to cover these particular objectives today: the administrative user versus standard user, administration tools. We're going to go over the control panel. Other administration tools are command line utilities and the server manager. We're also going to go over the MMC, the Microsoft Management Console, and server roles and features. Administrative user versus standard user. An administrative user has broad rights and privileges to make changes to a system. They can pretty much do anything that they want to user names, passwords, creating users, deleting users, and rights to any resources on the server or the domain. A standard user, however, can have limited rights and will not be able to make all kinds of changes to the domain. However, they can generally make changes to their own computer they're logged into, such as they can change their password, they can add a printer, they can share something on their own computer, and that kind of thing. In the control panel on Windows Server 2012, you'll see a collection of tools for managing the system configuration. And there are multiple ways to get to these different tools. One way, of course, is the control panel itself, and you can click on the default view. The other is the classic control panel, which is an alternative view that lists each of the tools separately by name. The default view categorizes these different tools and allows you to decide which way you want to view those tools. So let's take a look at the control panel. Log into DC01. And then we'll find our control panel and we'll go ahead and take a look at the different tools. Okay, so our control panel has already been pinned to this location, but if it hasn't been pinned, then you can easily get to the control panel by going into the upper right-hand corner, and then you can click on Search, and you can type in Control Panel. And from there you can just go ahead and click on it. Alright, so our control panel has a couple of different views. The default view is the category view. So you can see here we've got system and security, network and internet, hardware, programs, etc. So for our class, we're going to be changing this to either the large or the small icons, just because we need to see the individual tools that are more easily attained. So inside these control panel tools, you will see administrative tools. Now, administrative tools shows us a list of the same tools that you would see in Server Manager under Tools. So if we go into Server Manager, then we're going to see the same kind of tools that we would have seen in this list. And some of those tools are the Active Directory tools, such as domains and trusts, sites and services, and the one where you will use mostly in this class, and you will use as an administrator, Active Directory users and computers. Alright, so if you click on Tools under Server Manager, then you will see the same list of tools that you would have seen in the control panel administrative tools. Gotta wait for everything to load up. There we are, and you can see those same lists. Active Directory users and computers, sites and services, and you can launch them from right there. All right, you can also launch a lot of these tools from the command line utilities that we can use. Our DNS command, it displays and manages configuration of DNS services. Ipconfig, which we talked about a little bit in the last lecture, we'll expand upon. NSLOOKUP, path ping, and traceroute, which we did a demonstration of in Lab 1. So let's take a look at some of the more advanced ways of using the utilities we've already used. So earlier we did a ping, and you can ping your own IP address, which it is. You can also ping localhost in case you don't know your own IP address, and you'll get the version 6. If you do a -4 at the end of that, it'll give you the loopback address, 127.0.0.1. Now, if we do a ping -A and then put in the IP address, you'll see that it resolves the name of the IP address. In this case, it's DC01. If you do a ping -T, it will do a continual ping until you hit Control-C to stop it. This is handy in case you're reconnecting, disconnecting, and you want to see when the network interface comes back up. So we'll hit the Control-C, and then that will stop it. Another command we used last time was ipconfig. If you type ipconfig, it shows you the version 6 address, the version 4 address, subnet mask, and that's it. But if you do an ipconfig/all, then you see information that you wouldn't otherwise see, such as the host name, DNS suffix, additional information, and also additional information on the other network interfaces that are on the server as well. Now, if we do an ipconfig/register DNS, that will register the name of the computer in DNS Manager. So in case you cannot find a computer, you go to that computer, type ipconfig//register DNS, and then you will be able to register that in DNS Manager, and it will show up at that point. Now you can also do, if you want to release your IP address and you are on a DHCP IP address, so a dynamic address, not a static address, you can do ipconfig/release, which is going to fail because we have a static address, and a renew will automatically renew the address. So there's a few extra switches, as we call them, to some of these command line utilities. Server management is made up of several categories, and we're going to take a look at those. It has the dashboard, local server and server groups, roles and features installed, and then volume and storage information. Roles and features. Roles provides an overview of the status of the roles installed on a server, as well as options for managing those roles. Features provide an overview of the status of the features installed on the server. So the basic difference between roles and features are that roles basically manage the domain and features manage the server. So I will show you some of those examples coming up. Role services are software components that provide the functionality of server roles. So basically these are the subsets of the server roles. And once again, I will show you an example. Each server role has one or more related role services. So you have to have some role services underneath the server role in order for them to work. With these server roles, you can choose which role services to install. I know that can be confusing, and it's definitely something that comes up on quizzes and tests. Features are software components that provide additional functionality to the server. There are multiple features such as Windows backup, WINS, and various different other features. Terminal, telnet sessions, and telnet servers are also on there as well. So I will show you how to get those installed and what the different features are. So a computer can have multiple features just like it can have multiple roles, depending on its configuration. You configure roles, role services, and features using Server Manager. Under Storage, it displays drive information and provides access to drive management tools. Servers, volumes, disks, storage pools, shares, and iSCSI are all different categories inside the storage area of Server Manager. So let's take a look at some of those different features. We are back in DC01. We are now in Server Manager. So from here it says configure this local server. We can add roles and features. We can also add other servers to manage and create a server group. These are two new features in Windows Server 2012. that were not in 2008. So let's go ahead and click Add Roles and Features. So we see our wizard shows up. We'll go ahead and click Next. We can see role-based or feature-based installation. We're going to choose that because we're not doing anything that has to do with remote desktop at this time. It's asking us which server, and then we're going to say the local server. And we can now add these roles to other servers if we choose. And from here, we can choose any one of these various different server roles. And as I mentioned earlier, any one of these roles will affect everybody else in the domain. For instance, if I add a DHCP server, then it will add DHCP as an option for everyone else in the domain. When I click Next, it gives me the option to choose features. Now this used to be separate in Windows 2008. In 2012, it's all in one wizard. So you had two wizards before, now you just have everything in one wizard. So if I want to, I can choose a feature, and you can see a lot of these features. They just mainly affect the server itself. So these are additional features that help the server run. And we can choose them if we want, or just go ahead and click Next. And then when we're done, click Next. Now it's saying that the DHCP server, if we install it, it's going to ask us to configure it. And we'll go ahead and let that install. This installs fairly quickly. And then when that's done, it's going to ask us how we want to configure the DHCP server. Okay, it is all done at this point. And we can choose Next to configure it if we want to. It's going to say what's the credentials, and we can go ahead and click Commit in order to move on to the next one. And anyway, there's all different kinds of configuration that we can do with DHCP server, which we're not going to do in this particular class, but I just want to make sure you're aware of it. So you can see here all the different roles and server groups. We don't have any server groups, we just have the one role, but we could create them if we wanted to. Server groups are all different kinds of servers that are in our domain. And you can see on this particular server, we have these roles: Active Directory Domain Services, DHCP, DNS. All these are roles that we have installed after creating the server. You won't see this many. All right, now underneath these server roles are role services. Each one of these is a role service. This is what you will be tested on, the difference between a server role and a role service. So if we decide to click on manageability, for instance, we can see additional information that has to do with that particular one. If you click on events, you can see if there's any events that are related to that particular role. You can also click on services as well. So you can see we haven't really used this much, but it does give you an idea. So if we click on the left-hand side, we can see some additional information with all that information expanded that we saw earlier. Services, events, best practices analyzer, performance, roles and features. Under DNS, same kind of thing. All this is the expanded version of the dashboard and clicking on these individual items. All right, so we also have storage, and under storage you see file and storage services. You can see we have servers here, we have events, and if we scroll down you see services again that are related to this. These are the different, there we are, server role, role services. So these are the role services that go along with the server roles. Best practices, etc. Click on volumes. And we can see under volumes, we just have this particular volume that shows up. We have shares. We don't have any shares created yet. Under disks, you'll see our hard drive shows up. And basically all this does is rearrange everything. Storage pools. Now the storage pools are on top, virtual disk or physical disks and virtual disks are on bottom. Shares. You can see just basically this just changes around the order of things. Now iSCSI is a new thing that is in Windows Server 2012. iSCSI has always had the ability to connect to an iSCSI target, but now this could be the target itself. So if you decided to put a bunch of hard drives in your Windows Server 2012, you could turn it into an iSCSI target itself that other computers can connect to. So basically that means that other servers can connect to an iSCSI target on this particular machine, and they can add it as a local drive. So when they click on their file manager, their Windows Explorer, and they click on computer, they can have, for instance, their F drive or their G drive, whatever it is that they'd like, but it's really sitting on this particular server. So that's one of the advantages to iSCSI. You can have multiple different computers all connecting to the same targets on this particular server. So it turns this into a storage area network, which makes it really handy, and it also can lower your costs because iSCSI devices tend to be in the $10,000 or more range. You can make your Windows Server do that for a lot cheaper. So let's go back to our dashboard, and you can see our server roles, our role services underneath them, and we'll go ahead and minimize that. And we looked at roles and features, storage, local servers and groups. Now local servers and groups is a little different because this is a domain controller. We don't have any local servers and groups. We have Active Directory users and computers. So we only have what's on the domain on this one. But computers that are not domain controllers, so there's our Active Directory users and computers that you imported information to in Lab 1. So computers that are not domain controllers, such as your Windows 8 computer, does have local users and groups, and we can see that right here. So we will go to our control panel. There it is. And we'll change over to large icons. And click on user accounts. And inside user accounts, we see the local users right here. We'll click on configure advanced user profile if we would like. And it shows us all the different users' profiles that are stored on this particular computer. We can also click on change user account control settings, manage user accounts. When we go to manage user accounts, we can see the 2 users that are on this computer. If we click on advanced and then we click advanced again, now we see users and groups. So here's the group. So if we want to add an administrator of the local computer, we go click on groups, click on administrators, and then you can see here we can add other people, or we can just add everyone if we want anyone who logs in to have administrator access. And that of course has to be on the local computer itself. There it is. Click OK, and now we've added everyone to be a local administrator to this computer. From here we can also right click, we can set passwords, we can change properties, we can also do the member of groups, sort of a backwards way of clicking on groups first. We can set other restrictions such as users cannot change password, account is disabled, and expiration, that kind of thing. Alright, so now we're going to talk about computer management. And under computer management, you have several tools such as the task scheduler, the event viewer, shared folders, local users and groups on non-domain controllers. So this won't show up on DC01. And we have some performance monitoring, device manager, that kind of thing. So if we want to see the computer management on the Windows 8 computer, you can right click, go to properties, And from here, we'll see our device manager, remote settings, that kind of thing. But if we right click and choose manage, we see a different screen. We see task scheduler, event viewer, shared folders, local users and groups, performance, device manager, disk management. Device manager, of course, shows us if there's any issues with our drivers. Performance shows us how the computer is doing if we decide to start that up. Event viewer shows us the different events. Now on our DC01, that looks a little different. So if we wanted to go and right click on computer and click on manage, instead it launches server manager. It doesn't launch computer manager. So if you want to get to computer manager on the server, you actually have to go to your search and type computer management. And now we see the same kind of thing: task scheduler, event viewer, device manager, etc. So computer management helps you manage services and applications. Any application or service related task that can be performed in a separate tool can be performed through services and applications nodes as well. All right, so we did a little bit of a demo of computer management, but some of these things that we noticed in Server Manager also show up here under disk management and looks more like the traditional, the 2008 and 2003 servers that you're used to. So in Server Manager, the storage looks definitely different if we click on File and Storage Services and then click on Disks, for instance. But ultimately, it shows us the same kind of information. It shows the 25 gigabyte partition there, and it shows it under the server management as well. MMC, this is a tremendous tool that you'll be using a lot as an IT administrator. It helps you manage computers, users, and everything else that's on the network environment. It provides the capability to build your own consoles and designed to be your central interface. It uses add-in components called snap-ins. You'll be doing this for Lab 2. MMC is basically a console that is a container for these snap-ins, and there's dozens of pre-configured snap-ins, but you can also get additional snap-ins from third-party software manufacturers, such as Symantec and McAfee and things like that. Although you can load multiple snap-ins into a single console, most of the pre-configured consoles have only a single snap-in. So an MMC has two operating modes, an author mode and a user mode. Author mode is the default when you first launch the program. In author mode, you can create and modify a console's design by adding or removing the snap-ins. In user mode, the console design is frozen. So if you create your own and under author mode, you can change the permissions so other people cannot make changes to the design that you've created. So 3 user mode levels are defined. You have user mode full access. Users can access all Windows management commands in MMC, but can't add or remove snap-ins. It's limited access, multiple windows. Users can access only the areas of the console tree that were visible when the console was saved. Some snap-ins can be set to work with local or remote systems, so you can add snap-ins that control other computers. So let's take a look at MMC. So you can get to the MMC from anywhere. You can do a search like we did earlier, or just go to a command prompt and type MMC. So here's our MMC, and we're going to go ahead and do add remove snap-in under File. And from here, we can add the same tools that you could have gotten to from administrative tools, but you can also do additional ones as well. So there's Event Viewer. Event Viewer is asking us, do we want the local computer or do we want to get the events off a different computer? We'll say the local computer. And we can choose Group Policy Object. We can choose all different ones. So in your lab, you are going to pick several predefined ones, and you're going to pick 3 of your own that you can talk about and do a little research on to tell me what they do and why you would want to add them. When you're done, you click OK, And now what we can do is if we want to save this, we can choose File, Save As, and we can make this a custom MMC, we'll just call it, and we'll put it on our desktop, click Save, close it. Now if we want to go back into it, we see our custom MMC, we double click on it, and it saved the snap-ins we added, so that way we don't have to keep adding them over and over. So once again, server roles and role services. Server roles are related sets of software components that allow servers to perform a specific function for users and other computers on the network, such as we added DHCP Manager. That's a function to allow IP addressing to happen on other people's computers. A computer can be dedicated to a single role, such as Active Directory domain services, such as a domain controller, or a computer can have multiple roles, such as it could be a domain controller, a DHCP server, a DNS server, and several other types of servers, all in one. So in conclusion, you've got, we talked about administrative user versus standard user, administration tools, control panel, command line utilities, server manager. We talked about the MMC and server roles and features.